What's up, guys? Welcome to KP Community episode number 9. Co-host Garrett Phelps. Garrett, welcome back, I guess. Might be replacing you in a couple of weeks with a guest. A little foreshadowing. Tonight we got a special guest on our how-to. Super excited to bring this one to you. Tonight we are talking all about the recruiting process. Disclosure, we are not a recruiting service. Contrary to what some people tend to believe about us for some reason, that we're a recruiting process, we are not a recruiting process. So with that being said, though, we will be giving some advice on our own journeys tonight in our Under the Hood. In the how-to, we have a special guest, like I said, who will be stopping in and sprinkling some very wise wisdom. Excited about this one. Steve Merriman of University of Michigan dropping in for us for that one. We're going to go to our AMA. We'll finish up with the wrap as always and talk about some things, some questions from you guys through AMA and move from there. So, ready to jump into it?
Yep.
How's your week going, Garrett?
Good.
Things are going great?
Yep.
Awesome. Winter training kicking up, having a good time, getting cold in Florida.
Yep.
Well, that's
Joggers
wonderful.
every
Joggers every day.
In the morning, and then it gets really hot at
Good.
afternoon.
How's your lifting going?
It's going.
Good. I mean, is there anything you want to tell the people about your lifting? I mean, is there anything?
No,
Give you the floor here just to.
no,
Huh?
160.
That's
Yeah,
not bad. Okay, excellent. Well, anyways, moving on. Let's jump to our sponsor, first sponsor for the night, real quick, and then we'll move into our how-to featuring Steve Merriman from the University of Michigan. Have you ever wanted a deeper understanding of your mechanics? For years, to fully get objective information on biomechanics, you had to visit a biomechanics lab. This process was clunky. Markers, a cold lab, expensive lab equipment. It was a process that many either couldn't experience or didn't enjoy. Good news, though. Today, you can get objective data on your mechanics right from the palm of your hand. No more awkward or expensive lab. Just you and your phone. ProPlay AI presents to you Pitch AI. Pitch AI is a groundbreaking technology with lab-accurate data right to you daily. Never has understanding how to improve your mechanics been so easy. Just capture, review, and repeat. Perfect your training anytime, anywhere. Pitch AI. Check it out today at proplayai.com. Awesome. So I'm super excited about this how-to. So full disclosure, Steve Merriman, one of my favorites. Steve and I talk weekly. We work with the University of Michigan, doing a lot of the throwing protocols for them with workload management and some other things such as ProPlay AI with them. Steve and I have been, we've chatted for a long time, but you've met Steve. Steve's come down. Steve's great. Stopped by the facility, hung out last winter. Took a trip up to Ann Arbor this year and visited up there. They've got some amazing things going on at the University of Michigan. I know a lot of people asking us, things about the University of Michigan and how to get there, how to play for the University of Michigan. Obviously, a very prestigious program. I want to pick Steve's brain this week on really what it takes, what he's seen. Uniquely, Steve's been at the pro level and the college level. I wanted to pick his brain on what it takes to play at the collegiate level, the Division I level specifically, and then maybe even go further from there. So let's jump in this week to our how-to with pitching coach from the University of Michigan, Steve Merriman. Steve, what's going on?
How we doing, Casey?
I'm doing great. Excited to chat with you today. Appreciate you joining us for Community. Today I want to talk about player development and really what you're looking at from your experience from their collegiate level and also from the pro level. Uniquely, you've seen both and experienced kind of recruiting, so to speak, from both ends, whether it be scouting or whether it be collegiate and actually recruiting. But before we get started, Steve, why don't we introduce yourself and give a little background?
I've seen every level. I've been at every level. I was a junior college head coach all the way up to spending time at the major league level with a couple of different organizations that I've been a part of. Back in the early 2000s with the New York Mets, as well as some time with the Colorado Rockies, Cubs, and the Royals. So I've seen it all and been at just about every level there is. So it's been quite the journey, and it's been fun. It's been great.
Well, you're one of the best. So, I mean, I know I don't throw that term around too loosely, but one of my favorites to talk to for sure in the industry, and always appreciate your insights across the board. So, let's jump into it today. Kind of start this conversation. You're at the University of Michigan. We go out and see these kids today. I think one of the big things that I want to touch on and get your opinion on is parents have this discussion of my son needs exposure or my son needs time to develop. Can you give me kind of your thoughts there and maybe what you're looking for when you go to look for a kid? What is it? If a parent's looking for exposure, what are you looking for that kid to showcase or to get them seen, so to speak?
I'm gonna try to narrow it down pretty simply, and that is, exposure means that the player is doing things that are productive when they're in opportunities to be witnessed by college coaches or professional scouts. Just because a kid is playing for a travel ball organization A, which has been deemed by everybody to be one of the best, doesn't mean that that's giving them the right exposure. It's Coaches are looking for guys who, obviously, number one, and scouts are looking for guys that act like they like to play the game. That means their bodies and their actions are telling you they like to play the game. They're not getting caught up in what happened with that pitch. They're not getting caught up with what happened in a particular at bat. They are showing you through their opportunity that they enjoy playing the game, number one. Number two, they do something that stands out. They do something that lets coaches and scouts know that this is somebody they should follow.
So tell me a little bit about, you've seen it from the pro level, you've seen it at the collegiate level. Tell me a little bit about how you look at intangibles or metrics for athletes, the things that they do from a talent standpoint. How do you measure it? How do you evaluate it? Kind of giving a loaded question here again, but how do we kind of go from looking at, if I'm throwing 75 and I'm in high school, realistically, that's probably not going to get me where I want to be at the Division I level. But what are you really looking for? Is it 90? Is it that magic number of 90 that you're looking for? I hear that a lot. Is it as simple as velocity? Obviously, I think there's more to it, but kind of objectively, how are you making those decisions, and what have you seen from the past?
No, 90 mile per hour is not the end all be all for a guy to become to get an opportunity to become a Division I player. And 94 isn't going to be giving the guy the opportunity to become a professional player, because there's a wide range of talent and abilities. So when you look at what I've seen most recently in the last 11 years at the pro level, now back at the college game, but how guys are moving, so how a guy moves is really important. And how does he then understand his body? And one of the things for me, it's really important as I look at guys, is do they have a visual acuity to what's going on? Do they have the ability to see what's happening with the pitch or with the particular thing that they're working on, and can they assess it from what they see? There's no one size fits all with how you look at the way a guy is moving, but there are indicators that tell you where you may have to spend more of your time in what a guy is doing, in terms of his preparation, in terms of his execution, and that all ultimately leads to his performance. So really, that's I guess how I would kind of make it down into a little nutshell type answer for what you said.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that's maybe the overlooked piece, and maybe the piece that we even started on, which was, when we look at seasons, we look at time frames for parents or for players. We're trying to value time to develop, and what you're developing is those pieces that you talked about. We're talking about movement, right? How do we develop better quality movement? How do we develop better quality strength? Starts in a devoted period of time. it starts and takes time. It's not something that just happens in a 2 month span. This is something that happens over time for an athlete. And by the time that they are to be seen by like somebody like yourself, we need to have a really strong base of that to be able to demonstrate those awarenesses and those components, so that when you look at them, you say, "Hey, I'd love for you to be at the University of Michigan." So maybe that's kind of full circle for us. Probably gonna bring you back on a couple of times here. We got so much to unpack and just a wealth of knowledge in terms of biomechanics and just day-to-day base. You've seen so much baseball in your lifetime. I hope to only see that much in my lifetime. So appreciate your support as always on the channel and with KP in general. Yeah, Steve, awesome time today, and best of luck this season moving forward with the U of M.
Thanks, Casey. I really appreciate being on, and look forward to being on again.
Sounds good, Steve. Talk soon. Boom. Steve Merriman, crushing it as always. So unpack. I mean, Steve does a lot of stuff at you there, and really. First off, Steve, thanks for coming on again as always. We'll definitely have him on the show again. Definitely more questions around biomechanics and some other things that he and I talk more on weekly around more pitching specific metrics and understanding. But I think that's such good insight. He says one thing that stuck with me, one clear thing that stuck with me more than anything else, and it's something that I honestly, we think about metrics so much. We think about 90 miles an hour. We think about 20-inch breaking balls. We think about spin rates. We think about how many wins you had in high school or whatever those things are. Right? We look at numbers, but he says one thing that made me completely rethink, and this is the wisdom of somebody who's been around the game as long as Steve has. But maybe so one thing that made me completely rethink the way that we approach and look at this. He says one of the things that he looks at is movement, quality of movement. And that when he said that, I kind of went, man, hold on a second. He's right. And it's what scouts, for so long, right? They have those isms, right? Those scout isms. Man, he's got a baseball body. Like, well, what in the world does that mean? Like, man, like he's so like, he just moves like a ball player. Oh man, like, his mechanics are so smooth, right? Or oh, he's herky jerky. And you hear these terms and you start to think to yourself, like, well, what are they talking about? Well, they're evaluating the way you look on the field. And the way you look is defined by how you move. The more athletic I look and the better I move as an athlete, the better off I am, right? So let's take this back for a second. Garrett, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second, right? If we're trying to build fluid, dynamic athletes that move well in multiple different situations, right? I think this comes back to people talk about like not specifying sport at a young age because we talk about building different planes of movement and building awareness of the body, pelvic awareness, and like all these different things that if you don't build it at a young age, it's really hard to build when you get older. Talk to me about just overall physical development of athletes. And if we're looking to be as fluid in movement, we're looking to build quality movement over time. Where do you think it starts from a physical side of things?
It's going to start from a physical side of things young, like 5, 6 years old. That's usually the biggest development of those like motor skills that they talk about being able to control their body. That's why you see like a lot of gymnastics and got like sports like those that when they grow up, they usually become better ball players because they understand where their body is at in space, which ultimately allows them to actually create movement on the field.
So I remember when I was young, I used to take a baseball, and I think I told you the story a couple of times, but I used to take a baseball, and don't mind the workload component of this. We'll talk about that later. But I used to take a baseball. I get home from school, hang out in the backyard. And I would take a baseball and throw it over my house with like a 2-story house. Throw it over my house and try to sprint around the backyard and then lay out and catch it. And I look back on that, and I think there's two things. One, my best friend and I used to play burnout in the backyard, and I try to throw a ball right through his chest, right? And then two is I would throw that ball over the house. So if you think about like that action of throwing the ball over the house and running around the house and trying to catch it, I was building hand-eye coordination, having to catch it, right? I was building different awarenesses and different lateral movements and different movements in space, going up and down hills, and having to lay out and trying to find the ball. This kind of cognitive awareness of where the ball was in space, right? max effort throws, the higher I threw it, I realized the more time I had to get under it on the other side also meant more of a probability of risk that I might hit a window, but I still did it. But I had fun playing, and I was trying new things and experiencing my body and pushing myself into different limitation or different, end of limitations and trying to explore new ranges. I think ultimately when I got to be in high school, that's what really made me a great athlete, was that I had done all these things at a young age. When somebody hit a ball over my head, it wasn't my first time experiencing having to go run backward and catch a ball over my shoulder. Um, when we start to think about these things, those things are not ingrained because a coach puts a bucket of balls down, when you're 16 years old and does a Z drill in the outfield and creates that thing. Those things are developed because you built it at a young age. So how can, give me an example here? I know strength and conditioning can be a huge component of this. It's something that I advocate constantly to youth. I know it's something that you advocate as well to younger athletes. How do we challenge youth athletes? It doesn't have to be. I think there's a huge mistake here that parents make. They always think it has to be that you play multiple sports. It doesn't have to be that you play multiple sports. We can. It's good too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but we can also train athletes at that age, correct?
Yeah.
How does strength conditioning play factor into creating those movements or recreating those movements that athletes might experience in multiple sports?
Yeah, so having a very structured program is going to help. Is going to help develop those patterns, especially being able to really stand on one leg. Especially from a youth standpoint, if you can stand on one leg, you're probably going to be pretty good when you put 2 feet on the ground. Baseball, you spend 80% of the sport on one leg, so it'll probably be a good idea to learn how to be on one leg a lot, especially in youth athletes starting from basically youth to real training, like 14, high school, 13 range, is the compensation patterns that we see with the 16 to 18, the pro guys, those weren't developed when they were 25. They were developed from lack of training when they were 13, when they first started out, and not being able to train correctly to mitigate. We're not going to be able to withstand all compensation. We're playing a sport. We're going to create compensation patterns, but we can have a training on the other end to counteract as much as possible. We're going to be in a safer spot from a body standpoint, and then being able to be really detailed in how we actually create those ranges of motion from a lunge, from an RDL, from a rib cage position, a pelvis position, and being able to dial in those movements every rep, every set for years on end. That's where they're really going to be able to develop those movement patterns, is in the details of their actual training program.
Yeah, I think you talk about those different types. I think there's an awareness here that Steve brings into the picture that I think is really good to also talk about and note, that he talks about an athlete's ability to recognize. He kind of mentions it as like in a pitch, right? So they recognize that that pitch wasn't as good as they wanted it to be, and they learn how to manipulate it right in that moment. So they might have changed finger pressure, they might have just cognitively thought differently and created a different cue, but they come up with a way to review that action. And they come up with a new way of formulating a new action. And I think that is, again, something that is instinctual in many cases. It's very hard to teach somebody to do those things. I know you talk about it in the weight room. We see it in the weight room with guys. You'll teach somebody something and say, hey, like for example, like rib cage down, and then we'll want that athlete to hold that or recognize that. Then you turn back around, you go to the next athlete next to that athlete, and then you turn back around, that athlete's completely out of what you just taught him, right? And we see that, and that's the crossover as well. From that happens in the weight room, it's going to happen in the throwing space. That's coaching, but it's also athletic awareness. It's individual athlete awareness. So developing that at a young age is important. Some kids, grab onto that cognitively much earlier, but it's something that we can encourage and teach through strength conditioning through a really quality program. Again, this goes back to, and this is so many things we can unpack here, but this goes back to, having at a young age coaches who can challenge you, coaches who understand what they're trying to accomplish long term. This isn't just go out and play every day, even though that's going to bring awareness to that type of competitive environment, and that athletes, it's going to build that competitive drive. It's also trying to understand how we can challenge these differently, not just putting you on the mound at 9 years old, and having you only pitch constantly, never doing any strength training, never doing anything else. Not saying 9-year-olds need to strength train. We just need to challenge them differently and create that cognitive awareness at that young age to start to challenge them differently, to think outside the box, so that when you get to be older and it's time for you to go compete in front of a Steve Merriman, yes, your awarenesses or your talents may be at a certain level, which is awesome. But what Steve is looking at is, yes, he's looking at the talent, but he's also looking at that, what did you develop from a young age? And I think that's maybe something that so many people don't understand, is how do you build for an athlete that big picture. How do I get my kid from where he is today? Not that I want parents at 9 years for the 9-year-old thinking about University of Michigan. Maybe you have big dreams. That's awesome. But how do I get my kid from where he is today to develop and be the very best baseball player he can be? So when that day comes and he hangs up his baseball cleats, you know what? It might be something on the other side of it, or at the end of the day, we know that we did the best we could to build him where he can be. So, Garrett, anything to add to that? Boom, crushed it. Awesome. Let's jump in tonight to our next sponsor, and then we're going to be moving over to the Under the Hood, where Garrett and I will talk a little bit about our recruiting process. Garrett, I'm excited. I hear this. There's rumors of soft serve ice cream influencing your decision into the college baseball realms. I want to hear this story. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's jump to our next sponsor. As we know, it is crucial to further our education as coaches. To continue education, it is important to have a deep relationship with other leading coaches and leaders in the baseball industry. That's why Connecting the Dots Coaches Conference was created. The CTE goal is to ensure meaningful one-on-one conversations with industry leaders. This conference goes beyond the presentation and connects both your furthered knowledge with an industry-leading network. Join CTD on December 3rd through the 5th in Knoxville, Tennessee. For more information on CTD, visit ctdbconference.com, where you can learn more about the conference and also see our speaker list. Tickets are now free. TJ Wharton came on and gave us the announcement the other day. Tickets are now free, so we will see you guys free of charge in Knoxville, December 3rd through the 5th. I'll also be speaking there. So look forward to seeing you guys in Knoxville. All right, moving to Under the Hood tonight. For those of you guys who have not picked up yet, Under the Hood is our segment in which we talk about our philosophy, what built our business as KP. Garrett and I oftentimes will share our stories, our experiences. In this case tonight, we're going to get super personal and talk about the recruiting process. As we said, this is going to be a complete recruiting episode for KP Community episode number 9. So I'm going to start off. We have 3 questions tonight. We're going to move to asking those 3 questions. So, Garrett, you ready to do the Under the Hood?
Yep.
You ready to talk about this soft-serve ice cream?
Yeah.
Boom. So first question, I'm going to ask to Garrett, and Garrett's going to turn around and ask me these 3 questions in return. Garrett, first question. How did you get recruited?
I got recruited from a all-state junior showcase. So basically just top players in Indiana, and got seen there, and just went on and play my senior year, and that's when I finally got an offer, I guess.
So why don't you tell everybody where you went to school, and obviously Indiana, you were in Indiana, right? So tell everybody where you went to school for college, and was it just Indiana that you did showcases in?
So I went to Manchester University in North Manchester, Indiana, small town, but awesome town. I did a bunch of showcases all around Indiana, and then obviously played some travel ball where we went to East Cobb and stuff like that to get recruited. But really, it was always just showcases around Indiana that I would go to. Went to a lot of them. So
nice. Well, let's move on to the next question. What made you choose the school you did? And I've heard insider scoop on this. I'm excited. Scoop, no point intended, no pun intended. Give me a little background on this.
So, our high school, my high school that I went to, was very structured from an off-season standpoint, from a structured standpoint, everything like every day, all day baseball, which is awesome. Like that's probably why I was as good as I am. But when I was getting recruited for college, I like to train a lot. obviously that's why I'm a strength coach, and I still train today. So when I was getting recruited, I talked to the guy, and I asked him, "What do you guys do from a training development standpoint in the fall?" Because I know fall is a big time. I played football, so I really always had football going in there. I knew I wasn't going to play football in college, so I was like, okay, this is going to be a really good time for me to develop. So when I looked at that, I asked him, and he said, "Oh, it's all on your own. We have a month of fall ball, and other than that, from basically end of September to January, it was all on your own." And being me, I was like, okay, that sounds great. And then, so I already leaning towards that side. And then we were talking about like food and stuff and cap and stuff. And he said, "Oh, we also have an unlimited soft serve ice cream."
Boom. In.
And I was like, I'm in because of that. And the funny part is that's not the first time he said that to somebody, and somebody else came to Manchester because of the soft serve ice cream. So it's really funny, but it was more from I wanted to play college baseball. I was somewhat burnt out from high school, just about how much it was, and training development, being able to do what I want to do from a lifting standpoint. I really wanted that because I love training, and just knowing what I know now is because of that.
Nice. So last question we have is, do you have any regrets on your recruiting process?
On my recruiting process, no.
Nice. That's great. No, you only went and saw one school.
No, I didn't even go to any schools. I didn't go on a single visit because I'll tell you a story. So there's one school that was going to offer me a D2 school, pretty good, in Indiana, and they were like, "Hey, we need you to come down. We want you to come down for a visit on a Thursday." Thursday was, I think squatting day or something. I had training that day, and I told them, I was like, "Guys, I really don't care what the campus looks like. I'm not gonna miss training, so just tell me how much you're gonna offer me, and like I'll make a decision." Like I didn't want to waste the time driving 3 hours there, 3 hours back, missing training because I like training so much. And coach on the other line said no, and then just hung up, and it was the end of that. Okay. So I was like, okay.
Do you regret that?
No. I loved everything about my decision. So
good, excellent, awesome, dude. That's all that matters. So let's back it up. I'm gonna flip it over to your end. You can go ahead and ask away.
How did you get recruited, Casey?
Oh gosh. So I was, I guess the first time I played a perfect game event as an 8th grader with seniors in high school, like guys that were much older than I was. I went to Jupiter, and that was the first time I got seen. I was throwing like 88. Long story short, perfect game ranking was what got me. So I was in the top 20 in perfect game my sophomore year, and then started getting invites to all this stuff, and that ranking system. I mean, I just started getting letters like crazy. So next one.
What made you choose the school you did?
So this is a story. So I went on, I think, 16 different visits, and my dad and I actually put together an Excel spreadsheet, and we listed off everything from how good the campus looked to how good the girls looked to the baseball stadium quality to how well we thought the coaches were going to develop me as a player. And I had such limited knowledge at the time of what that meant, like, and what the process looked like. I visited Georgia, and I went to USF before I actually ended up going there in the future. I went to where else? I went all over: SEC, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, South Carolina. I visited all these schools, and they're all beautiful. Like, they were all great. They all had their perks, right? Went to Ole Miss, and what really sold me on Ole Miss was, number one, the baseball stadium there is amazing. I had some family ties there, so that played into me making a decision to go there, and then ultimately, I really did feel like they were going to develop me as a player. And then you can't deny the fact that when Alabama comes into town for a football game there, it's a little electric in the Grove. So that was. All of those factors played in. I think Ole Miss really won out on that spreadsheet. Just all the stuff that was there, and I felt like when I made the decision, I had my family's backing and blessing that was a great decision for me. We all thought that was the right decision for me. So yeah, I ended up pulling the trigger on Ole Miss.
Do you have any regrets?
Tons. So I could have gone to any school in the country, and reality is, I think, I look at, I was infatuated with the big SEC schools, and that's because that's where I thought I was supposed to go, right? My family was all Florida Gator fans. I went up to Ole Miss, and I had some family ties to push me to Ole Miss, and I thought that and felt that again, like this spreadsheet, this concept of like ranking things and trying to understand, asking questions about development. Like they answered all the right questions. All the schools. I mean, I didn't feel like I could have made a bad decision. Reality was, I was probably not best suited going to a big SEC school, a big D1 school. I was probably best suited going to a mid-major school that would have kept me in the state. Uh, a reality is that I look back and you start to look at college, and everybody's infatuated with the schools that they see on TV on the weekends, right? You and I watched football games this weekend, talked about how good the teams were, had our opinions on the top 6 teams in the country. But reality is, what the football teams do has absolutely nothing to do with what you're going to do. And the reality is also that because you want to go there, there's also a whole list of kids that want to go there as well. It's a very popular school. So it's a turnstile. These kids come in, they're great arms. They're going to be behind you, in front of you. You may not end up playing because there's favorites, there's politics, there's a lot of money at the school. You're going to have a lot of things. So my regrets, honestly, are just not vetting the process better, not understanding what I wanted to get out of it, and then two, not going to a place where, especially after everything I went through I would come off Tommy John surgery the previous year. I missed the draft and thought that I was still trying to get back to the draft. I needed more. And what's kind of crazy is, you make a decision like that when you're 16, 17 years old. And then 2 years later, you actually have to go there and do it. And you start to realize, like, man, there's a window of time at which reality sets in that maybe I made a different decision. Maybe I would have made a different decision. Maybe I wasn't so sure about that decision. And so you kind of start to kind of oversee and reconsider what all of this means. So I think, to wrap this up tonight, I think one of the kind of, I don't know, I think the recruiting process is challenging. It's a different landscape today, right? I think looking at, you D3, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a ton of great talent that comes out of D3 that ends up in the big leagues. Is it harder to go from D3 to the big leagues? Absolutely. But can it happen? Absolutely. We talk about Division I schools. Everybody gets infatuated with the Power 5 schools. I want to go play in front of 12,000 fans. I want to go, throw on Fridays. Look, that's an awesome dream, and go chase it. Like, go to football games on the weekends, enjoy the big campus. But reality is, you talk about mid-major schools. Like, I mean, I ended up at USF, and the University of South Florida offered just as much scouting. My goal was to get drafted. It wasn't to be like the world's best college, Friday night guy and win games for a school and go to Omaha. It was great, but I wanted to win. But it wasn't about, for me. It was about getting past college and going pro. I wanted to play in the big leagues, and so I think from your end of it, maybe expand a little bit on if you're talking to a parent or a player today, maybe like, did you enjoy your experience in college as a baseball player?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't fully enjoy my first year of college that much. I mean, in terms of being a baseball player at that camp, there's a lot of pressure. There's things I wanted to handle, and it's nothing to do with the coaching staff or the school. I still love Ole Miss. I think it's an amazing school. Still a huge fan, that, on the weekends. But I look back, and it was a weird decision for me, right? And I ended up in junior college for a year, and then another 4-year school with USF, and did really well at USF. But I mean, I think people misunderstand what D3 baseball is. It was tough for you. It was a challenge, right? It was good baseball. I mean, you enjoy it.
Decent amount of baseball. Yeah.
I mean, you enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
And so same for me. Like, I played and I competed and I enjoyed it, and I had something to fight for my years of college. And I got the opportunity to play pro ball, and I know you didn't, but it's fine. It's again though, like, what are you trying to get out of it? And I know, like, you talk about, like, your goals were kind of in the weight room and training. You were so infatuated with training. it got you where you wanted to be. You got a master's in exercise science. I mean, let's be honest here, right? It moved you to that next level, and look where you are today. I mean, you're training professional athletes. That's awesome. So, we all have our journey, and I think the one thing that I can say about the recruiting process that I'll wrap this up on is, and maybe I'll let you add in if you have anything else to add here, but the one thing I can say to any parent, any player talking about the recruiting process, understand what it is that people are looking for you, why people are looking at you. Sorry. Don't get caught up in the soft serve ice cream. Don't get caught up in the Nike contract. Don't get caught up in the stadium. Don't get caught up in the success of the program. Don't get caught up in a lot of the things that are going to be thrown at you in terms of marketing. Even the technology, most coaches, most schools don't quite use the technology as effectively as I think they could. I actually have a list, and we'll finish on this list of questions that I wrote out on Twitter for parents to ask coaches. Okay. Garrett, I want your opinion on these, if you think they're good or not. Okay. Number one, how often do you use tech? This is, again, parent or player to a coach. How often do you use tech in your program, and can you explain to me the system to which you communicate relevant data regularly? Thoughts, Garrett?
Yeah, that's pretty relevant.
Okay, excellent. Number two, how open are you with me exploring other training modalities?
Yeah, really important.
Did your coach let you explore other training modalities?
Absolutely, because I got to do whatever I wanted.
You got to write your own program. Number three, what are measurable items that will allow me to be considered for the role I desire on the team? What I mean by that is, what are the things that you're looking for in order to select a Friday night starter? Is it all political? Are there actual intangibles that I can achieve to get myself to where it needs to be? Garrett, thoughts?
Yeah, we had that too.
Perfect. I think one of the things there is, like, you and I talk a lot about building reports for people. Like, we have some teams sending players in this off season, encouraging guys to come to us, and we're building reports for them to showcase to them, hey, this is where this guy's at. They want to see long-term progression from especially some of the younger athletes, so that's huge. Number four, who runs the strength program, and what other teams do they work with? Why in the world would I say that, Garrett?
Because the strength program has some input as much as pitching as the skill as aspects.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have strength and conditioning coaches who are expected to work with the football program 90% of the time, work with the baseball program 10% of the time. So guess who gets neglected? The baseball program. That's your future. Don't let it slip away. Number five, what does the strength program look like? It's crazy to me that it is like a secret. You cannot get these schools to give you a program.
Yep.
Like, you and I have asked players for, hey, just send us your program. Like, let's talk about it. Let's just be open about it. And you got strength coaches and groups that won't let their kids bring their phone into the weight room because they're afraid of them taking a picture of their program. Like, there's no secret sauce that you have. I'm sorry. No matter what Division I program you have, you are not finding a secret sauce that other people outside of that program are not finding. And it should all come back to assessment anyways. So that's my next question that I put on here anyways, which is, what does the assessment process look like for an individual athlete, and how often do you assess? If you're worried about us taking a picture, it shouldn't matter, because it should be an encouraging assessment, the individualization of assessment as it is. Some of these schools have so much money and biomechanics labs and all the other stuff, but they never do full qualitative, they never quantify full assessments in their process. Number seven, what does a throwing program look like? Same thing as a strength program. Number eight, what is the availability of the athletic trainer? It is amazing to me how many schools do not make their athletic trainer available to their players. If you get hurt, they tell you to suck it up and keep moving. If you feel like there's something bothering you, they will not let you talk to an athletic trainer, not give you ice. They will not let you sit in the training room and work on anything. You cannot do anything preventively because they look at it as being weak. That has been shown time and time again. It is at big D1 schools. Do not let it fool you. This is all across the country. So those are my 8 things. To wrap it up tonight, Garrett, any final closing remarks?
Do what's best for you.
Boom. Couldn't have said it better myself. Moving on to our AMA tonight. To finish it up, Garrett, we've got a question for you, and then I've got a question for me. So, AMA, ready to go?
Yep.
Let's do it. All right. Vic Diaz asks, and shout out Vic, longtime friend of KP, huge believer, one of the first big believers in KP. Shout out Vic. Appreciate you shooting us in a message on this one. Vic asks, great question, how is good posture defined?
Yeah, so most people look at good posture as this like very like shoulders down and back, chin tucked, neutral spine, and all that stuff. But in reality, there's anatomy differences that are going to change the presentation of someone's posture. Um, for example, you're gonna have there's some guys that are super round, like super curled up in a ball, like this, while there's some guys that are super wide with the chest open here, and those are going to look completely different. Obviously, like if someone's here, they're going to look more rounded over,
Yep.
slouch position, rolled over. If someone's here, they're going to look more open and like ability to like stay wide, get wide.
Sure.
So the real point is that there's not a single like one size fits all posture because the anatomy in and of itself is going to dictate the presentation. Two, if we're going to try to change the posture because we're trying to go from a good to a bad, it starts with an assessment process that's going to actually show us why we need to change that.
Sure.
And then off that assessment, training in a way that we can then change the posture if that's ever needed to be done.
Sure. I know in our assessment process, we have guys take their shirt off, kind of evaluate, some of their scapular movements. We look at where that rib cage is,
Yep.
all keys and giving us some indication that, hey, this guy is a better mover this way or not a better mover this way. Helps us indicate some strength components in our lifting program. Also helps us kind of identify some guys in the throwing process. If there's going to be a limitation in things like external rotation, or if there's going to be a limitation in trunk rotation or trunk flexion, sometimes these indicators can tell us. So going back to the specific question, how is good posture defined? Loaded question. Vic, sorry, we don't have a specific answer for you on this one. But good posture, I would say this, it is not defined as the universal terms that most people want to make it, which is neutral positioning, chin tucked, really like tall spine. Like, that's not really like good posture, so to speak. Not necessarily always good posture, so to speak. Some guys that don't look like that have good posture. It's just the way their body is built, your anatomy is built. So I think we have to bend that. I think we have to break that into multiple parts, and you'd have to ask the question, what is good posture for this individual, or what is good posture in this bucket? And then we'd have to start kind of looking at it from that, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Moving on to the next one tonight, and our last question in the AMA. When should the front leg extend in the throwing motion? Bobby Christie from Pepperdine. Shout out Bobby, one of our long-time guys. Bobby's been killing it this fall. Appreciate the question, Bobby. When should the front leg extend in the throwing motion? So, great question. I think there's two parts to this to understand. So when we throw, the lead leg lands in flexion. So we measure it as flexion. It's the angle from the hamstring to the calf. Basically, that knee, that bend that knee creates. Typically, we want to see somewhere around like 45 degrees is what we're looking for from a guy. And then that should stabilize. So from the time we land in foot plant to the time we go back to max external rotation, that should just be right around that 45 mark. It shouldn't flex too much. It shouldn't extend too much. It should just be right there. Some guys extend a little bit early, so that's fine. But right before MER, we want to see that knee start to extend. One of the biggest mistakes I see, guys think about this and they start to look at like javelin throwers and they think about like hyperextending the lead leg. They think that extension happens because they actively extend the lead leg. Extension of the lead leg happens because the pelvis continues to rotate and we're really stable through the lead leg or the lead foot in the ground. So I would encourage, a couple of things here. If you're feeling that this is an issue, I always tell guys, look at your shoes. Number one, if you're wearing clouds, these massive heeled, like squishy, like padded shoes that you have on, those can be a huge issue with a lot of guys. Get yourself some decently, quality trainers. Nike Metcons are always great for that. We talk about that a lot. I personally wear New Balance stuff, but that's because I can get some flat ones there. But understand that there's some limitations there. Two, going back to defining how we should be moving. So there's the angle at which the leg is. So from 45, we should then move into straight. Not everybody's going to get fully extended to 0. A lot of guys will go from like 45 degrees to maybe 20 degrees or 30 degrees. But it's about the knee extension velocity. So how fast is that knee extending? If you look at guys like Nolan Ryan, for example, his knee did not fully extend by the time he got to ball release. he was the guy that stayed flexed. So we look at javelin throwers, and it gives us a misconception of like we need to hyperextend his knee. Javelin throwers move very linear. They run down the path and they plant that leg in the ground. It's a completely different movement. In this case, we're rotating into foot plant with our pelvis, with our trunk. Our whole body is rotating. Not the trunk in that case, but our whole body is rotating around that lead leg over time, and that lead leg is going to extend. That extension velocity is what means a lot to us as well. If you're looking at like pro play metrics, we're looking at probably 150 degrees per second. It's pretty solid. So we're looking at that range and trying to figure out, is that leg adequately extending in its velocity? Is that leg adequately extending from a certain degree to another degree? Again, it doesn't have to be zero. So when should the lead leg extend? It should happen just before max external rotation and go all the way up to ball release. And that's what Bobby's asking here, is when does it extend in the throwing motion, before ball release or after ball release? It is before we want to impact and create rotation, flexion of the trunk around that, or basically braced off that lead leg. We want to accelerate the trunk based off that lead leg. So great question, Bobby. Appreciate that one. Hopefully that answers it. There's other resources on YouTube, our YouTube channel, which is now getting packed with some how-tos, getting packed with some other segments here. So Bobby, I encourage you and others here that are watching that want more information on that, please check out the YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, which takes us to our last point tonight, which is last segment, the wrap. Ready to wrap it up tonight?
Nope.
Boom. Winter training is coming fast right now. We have got more guys, college guys especially, piling in. We are going to hit our cap this winter as it stands. We've got guys registering online for assessments. We encourage all of you guys that want to come in and get with us, train with us this winter. Please make sure you go online to KineticProBaseball.com. Sign up for your assessment. Assessments are Wednesdays and Saturdays right now. We're really, really excited about this winter. It's going to be a great time. We got a lot of great athletes coming in. The community at KP is growing. We've got a lot of really good education happening right now around a lot of our content that you see here, our Coop. So for those of you who are members with us, make sure you check out your member content page, coop.KineticProBaseball.com. Sign in with your password. Be sure to check out the content as it drops. Reeves, Matt, Garrett, crushing it every day, getting you guys new information on there, keeping this thing fresh, and making sure we support you guys. If you guys have questions, you guys want more information on Kinetic Pro and what we do in terms of remote training or in-house training, we offer remote training for guys all around the world. We got guys in Japan and Canada, and we had guys in Mexico. We've got guys in all over the place. We've got a ton across the United States as well. But if you guys want more information on how we do remote training, it is unique. We utilize technologies, throwing sleeves. We utilize ProPlay AI to track and monitor your data on a daily basis and provide you guys reports weekly. We have our check-ins once a month. If you guys are interested in remote training or coming in-house and training with us, getting after it with Garrett in the weight room and getting after it with me, Reeves, Matt on the floor throughout the days, you guys just reach out to support@KineticProBaseball.com on email. We'd be happy to get you guys more information and follow up with you guys. With that being said, Garrett, episode number 9. Dude, we're almost at 10. We got to do something special for 10.
Nice.
Maybe like a cake or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Dude, maybe we wait off to 100. I feel like 100 would be better than 10. Episode 100?
What, in 2 years?
I mean, maybe. We could turn out a couple more, maybe. Anyways, maybe we'll do a cake at 10. Who knows? We'll see. We'll do something special for next episode. Celebrate 10. Celebrate Garrett being here for 10 9 episodes of the 10. That's right. Gotcha. All right. Guys, we appreciate the time as always. We will see you guys next week for KP Community episode number 10. Killing it. All right, guys. Have a good one. See you guys next week.